Hello everyone, it's Liz here.
And Connor.
And we hope you're having a great day wherever you are.
Yeah.
What have you enjoyed so far today?
I've enjoyed the short film that was on this morning.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
It was really good. And next up we have a panel discussion with ECO-UNESCO, SAUTI-Youth and Climate Ambassadors, and it's all about climate change and what young people are doing about it.
Yeah, and that's globally what they're doing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. We're also running a giveaway throughout the whole of the festival, and that can be seen on what platforms, is it?
Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and keep using the hashtag GalwayEye.
In the evening after the break, we have a workshop. Europe is open to you.
Yeah, that looks really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interactive and show possibilities of volunteering abroad with the European Solidarity Corps. So,
wow, I might get involved myself.
Yeah, it's probably a valuable experience to have as well.
Yeah, that's all for us now, folks, but have a great day and we'll see you soon.
Yeah,
bye.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, folks, you're going on.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're all very welcome to our event this afternoon, which is our Youth Climate Action panel, and we're very excited to have a fantastic array of panelists and of young people who are taking action on climate issues. Not just here in Ireland, but also internationally. I'm Elaine Nevin. I'm the National Director with ECO-UNESCO. I'm going to be your moderator for the afternoon. We're delighted to welcome Orla O'Neill, who's a Climate Ambassador, with Antashka, Michaela and Anthony Clark, who is part of the Youth Sustainable Development Programme with ECO-UNESCO, Ellen Butler, who's here from the SAUTI project with Youth Work Ireland, and Mildred Nazou, who's also here from the SAUTI project. And Mildred, you're not here in Ireland, isn't that correct? You tell us where you're zooming in from at the moment.
Thanks, Elaine. I'm actually in Nairobi, Kenya.
You're in Nairobi, Kenya, so you're very welcome and delighted to have you here today. The focus of our discussion this afternoon is youth climate action, and it's, I suppose, a particular focus on young people and the issues that young people, I suppose, their issues on climate action, but then also very much around the solutions and around what young people are doing, as I say, not just here in Ireland, but internationally as well. I mean, over the number of years, I suppose past number of years, we've seen a growing concern in young people around climate issues. And we've seen really young people leading the way in raising public awareness on climate issues and on climate action. And that's not just been here in Ireland, but it really has been a global movement. And young people, you know, we've had young people, I suppose, since 2019 in particular, and following, I suppose, in the vein of Greta Thunberg, they've been out in the streets, they've been marching. But before that, I know young people have been involved in climate issues and very much in environmental issues and trying to show that they are taking action. I think one of the things that we see, though, is that young people feel that they haven't been the cause maybe of the climate issues, and that they, though, want to be the solutions. And we in ECO-UNESCO, we did a survey in October of 2010 where we worked with Spun Out, and we found what young people were feeling around, we asked their opinions around climate change and climate justice and other environmental issues as well. And we had respondents coming, over 1,000 respondents from young people all across Ireland. And we're going to show you a short film of some of those responses from young people and what they actually felt. So this is highlighting some of those key findings, and I hope that this is going to, I suppose, set the scene in a little way for the panel discussion that we're going to have this afternoon. So I think, Jerry, you're going to play the video now.
Youth voices on issues impacting the health of our planet have never been louder, clearer, or more important. And so, in October 2020, ECO-UNESCO partnered with spunout.ie to survey young people on their outlook on topics such as climate change and climate justice. 1,043 young people took part in this survey. So, what do the survey results show us? We can see that 77% of young people feel very concerned or extremely concerned about climate change. The biggest problems that were identified were 48% of young survey takers ranked big businesses as their primary concern, and 38% of young people rank changes in government policies as the most prominent factor that could have an impact on tackling climate change. Over a third of young people mentioned that they're experiencing a form of eco-anxiety, or a fear over what is happening or might happen to the natural world if we keep polluting at current levels. 55% of young people feel they're not being listened to when they discuss climate-based issues. So, what are the main solutions that the young people of Ireland are calling for? Young people believe that changes in big business practices and government policies would have the biggest impact in tackling the climate crisis. 52% of young people stated that they wanted further education on climate-based topics. When asked what areas young people would like more information on, the top results were sustainable energy, the role of business and corporations in climate change, protecting nature and biodiversity, and how to take action on climate change. When asked what barriers there are to young people engaging in climate action, 59% of respondents said there was a lack of local opportunities to get involved. 50% wanted information on how to get more involved in the first place. And 45% wanted to learn skills in communicating their message to policymakers, organising environmental campaigns, and public speaking. We asked young people what actions they had taken on climate change. The survey shows that the most popular action among young people is reducing plastic waste, 89%. 81% of respondents have started using public transport, bicycles, and walking to reduce their personal effects on global warming. 60% are raising awareness with friends and family, and 53% of young people are buying second-hand clothes. 58% of young people say they are actively campaigning for change at their school, youth organisation, college or workplace, with 24% of these being involved in a local environmental action project. We asked young people what a greener, fairer world would look like to them. Here are some of their responses.
Where animals and plants have space to thrive in their natural habitats, and where all humans have access to their basic necessities.
Where we don't cut corners to save money at the climate's expense. Where the first question is, what impact instead of what price?
Every policy in government should have an environmental aspect to it, because without a functioning planet, we have nothing.
Multinational companies taking responsibility for harmful practices, or being fined a sizable tax if they don't change, and no waiting to implement it.
To access the full Youth Climate Justice Survey report, go to ECO-UNESCO.ie or click the link in the description below. We are actively seeking youth support to protect and better our planet. Whether you're a passionate young person, a youth leader looking to take action, or a parent or teacher looking to inspire change, join us and make a difference. Sign up to our newsletter and see how you can get further involved at ECO-UNESCO.ie.
So I hope, suppose you could see from the survey that what young people are saying is that they were feeling very and extremely concerned about global warming. That the big issue with young people was that they felt that they weren't being heard and not being listened to. Something else that came through was that they felt let down by older generations. That they felt they didn't have enough skills or knowledge and needed more information. But very importantly, they wanted systemic change. They also want to make a difference, and young people are taking action locally and they want to do more. So today we're going to hear from young people who are involved in 3 different initiatives from different organisations, which we hope will give you an insight into that great work that young people are doing at that local level. And you're going to hear, as I said, about some of those issues, some of the concerns, and very importantly about those solutions as well. We're going to hear from each of the panellists first, then we're going to have questions after that, and we'll take some questions from the audience as well. So we're going to kick off this afternoon with Orla O'Neill. Orla is a climate ambassador with An Taisce. She's currently studying physics in NUIG, and she's advocating for climate action within the university. So I'm going to hand you over to Orla now.
All right. So first of all, I have a few slides to introduce myself and the Climate Ambassador program. So I will share my screen now. So yeah, I am a climate ambassador. My name's Orla. My pronouns are she, her, all that good stuff. And doobie-doo wants to let me go on to the next slide. So just a bit about who I am and how my journey started off. So you can see me there in my neckerchief. I am an Irish Girl Guide. I've been a leader with them since I was 18. About 5 years. No, how old am I? I'm 22. You do the math. And I've been with them since I was 5 years old. So I've been with them my whole life. And they because it's the Girl Guides or the Girl Scouts, as some of you might know them. Like there's such a connection to the outdoors. You know, we go camping and hiking and we have campfires all the time. So I've always felt like a connection to like our natural worlds, despite like growing up in a city. And with the Irish Girl Guides, I was asked to help create a program to teach the girls there about Sustainable Development Goal number 12. We had previously come up with programs for number 3 and 13, which is good health and well-being and climate action, but we wanted one now about the use of plastic in our world and so on and so forth. And one thing led to another, getting involved in that, and then like just learning about how much, like how we consume and stuff like that, like how that negatively affects our environment. And like it was just a downward rolling of stuff happening, and I found myself at protests and changing my lifestyle and stuff like that. You can see Extinction Rebellion, I put them there. And if you guys have never been to a protest, like go to one as soon as we can. Like protests are really fun, I do recommend. And now I am working with the Eco Students group at NUIG, which is involved with the Student Union there. I'm with a few other groups in NUIG as well, but like the main one would probably be that working group. So yeah, that's me and how I got into this mess. So what are the Climate Ambassadors? So it's an initiative run by An Taisce, which is like the largest Irish environmental charity, well, and the oldest one, I think, which supports and trains individuals who are taking on climate action. And so they give you all the training that you need, a big confidence boost, you know, all that stuff. And then you as a climate ambassador will then carry out actions such as like workshops, litter picks, so on and so forth, just actions to do with the climate. Communications, so what I'm doing here right now is a communication, speaking to everyone here, or contacting politicians, going on the radio, so on and so forth. And a big thing to note with Climate Ambassadors is that like every year in October, we have a Climate Action Week. So it's from the 11th to the 17th this year of October. And there's so many events going on then. So like you should definitely check out the Climate Ambassadors website to see what's going on then. I know it's a while away, but put it in your diaries now before you forget. So in 2020, the Climate Ambassadors, there was 164 ambassadors, and together they completed 397 actions and 585 communications, reaching 9.1 million people. That's a lot of action. They're really a group that really focus on getting out there and getting change done. So you might think like just a quick note on how to become one. So applications open in September, so it's like quite a whiles away yet. So I'd recommend signing up to their mailing list. If you go to climateambassadors.ie or climateambassadorsingular.ie, it's just there on the first page that you see the mailing list is there. So, and also as part of the application, they ask you like, what have you done so far? Like, what climate actions have you taken in your own life? But you shouldn't feel like that's like, oh, I haven't done anything yet, I shouldn't apply. No, they're just making sure that you're someone who's passionate about it. So you don't have to have a ton of experience under your belt to apply. Like, they take everyone because they just want passionate people. So yeah, that's all I have to say with these slides. Here's all of their socials, emails. So climateambassador.ie, you're going to find all of this information. So yeah, that's the Climate Ambassador Program. Oh, you're on mute there, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Orla. And we're going to hear, I suppose we'll be asking a few questions about that. So we'll hear a little bit more later on about some of the initiatives and probably some of the practical kind of initiatives and projects I think, Orla, you've been involved with in, as a climate ambassador. We're now going to move on to Michaela and Anthony Clark. And Michaela and Anthony are part of the Youth for Sustainable Development Programme within ECO-UNESCO and also the Youth Action Network, among other initiatives. And they say they care about listening to other young people and educating people about environmental issues. And we're looking forward to hearing from Anthony and Michaela now.
Hi, we're just going to be sharing our screen first. Okay, sorry. So, hi everyone, thank you so much for having us. I'm Michaela Clark and this is my twin brother.
Hi, I'm Anthony Clark.
We're 17 years old and we joined ECO-UNESCO in 2019.
So what is ECO-UNESCO? ECO-UNESCO is Ireland's environmental, education and youth organisation that works to conserve the environment and empower young people. It's also a specialist provider of the environmental training, education and youth services in Ireland. And they work all over Ireland and work with partners in Europe and internationally. We are also affiliated with the UNESCO as a key partner of its Global Action Programme in the Education for Sustainable Development, which aims in educating the world on sustainable development.
So what exactly does ECO-UNESCO do? So a big part of ECO-UNESCO is education programs. So when Anthony and I joined ECO-UNESCO, we knew the very basics, and now we have learned so much more through the way they decide to educate young people. Another part is environmental training, workshops, resources, and publications. ECO-UNESCO constantly are creating new workshops, new experiences for young people, which is like a massive part of ECO-UNESCO because they want to involve as much young people as possible and reach enough young people. Another aspect of ECO-UNESCO is the Young Environmentalist Awards. So Anthony and I have been involved in these twice, and it's really trying to promote and encourage young people to take action, to start an action project, either individually or in their own area. So examples of these can be in your community, trying to reduce plastic in your school, or plant more trees, or pick up litter, stuff like that.
So the YSD, or Youth for Sustainable Development Programme, which Michaela said we were a part of, provides opportunities for young people to engage in quality development education for sustainable development activities, and then strengthen their capacity to take action on global justice issues by empowering them to act on youth leaders and peer development educators. And the main objectives from this is to empower young people, to really give them a voice and to create a safe space for young people and to take positive action for change.
So the first thing you'll be doing when you join YSD is a 12-week program. So that introduces you into the basics of environmental knowledge through workshops, games, and also learning about your peers and the other people, in your area that are also interested in the environment. Then the next big step is starting an action project. So ECO-UNESCO have a great support system and great mentors that will help your YSD group start the action project, and then you can enter that into the Young Environmentalist Awards. The next step is the QQI Level 5 peer education. So if you want to go further, you can then, ECO-UNESCO trains you to be able to educate your peers. After that, you take a year of action to then eventually become a young leader, if that's what you want to do.
Okay, so the YSD Impact has there's been a massive impact, on the YSD on Ireland. There's been 12 years of quality deep engagement with young people 14 to 19, such as ourselves. There's been 4 years of a leading program on the Sustainable Development Goals. And also 3 years of regional rollout to Drogheda, Bray, Carlow, Navan, Newbridge, Westport, and Dundalk, and has impacted thousands of young people, such as Michaela and me.
So ECO-UNESCO has really given us great opportunities and great skills. Now that we're graduated from the YSD program, Anthony and I are now part of the Youth Action Network, the YAN program. So now we are honing our skills so that hopefully we can become peer educators and facilitators for ECO-UNESCO and take a lot more responsibility within ECO-UNESCO and within our own environment. And now we are also currently doing another action project because of ECO-UNESCO's Youth Summit. So we are also starting a podcast called Teen Environmentalist, which we are working on publishing soon, which is very exciting. And ECO-UNESCO have been supporting us a lot with that. So if you want to hear more information, you can go to ECO-UNESCO's email, to their website, and to follow all their platforms because they constantly have new events and workshops that you can take part in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for listening to us.
Thanks so much, Anthony and Michaela. And again, we'll be back to you in a while to hear a little bit more about your project. I think it's called, I think in your book, Teen Environmentalist, is that right? The podcast that you're looking at doing. So we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in a little while. And finally, we're going to move on to the SAUTI project with Ellen and Mildred, but we're going to take Mildred first of all. And Mildred is with the African Union and the European Union Youth Hub, and it's a governance cluster. And so we're really looking forward to hearing from Mildred first of all, and then we'll hear then from Ellen from the SAUTI project, which is from Youth Work Ireland in Galway. So Mildred, it's over to you.
Thank you, Elaine. I'll just take a minute to share my screen. Great. So basically, I'll just start by telling you what the African Union, European Union Youth Cooperation Hub is. And this is an initiative that was born out of the AU and the EU Youth Summit that brought together young people from both Europe and Africa to collectively think about the issues that affect them. And sometimes we tend to feel like we are far from each other, but some of the issues that do affect us are the same, even though they affect us at different levels and different scales. So the AU-EU Youth Cooperation Hub was preceded by what we call the Youth Plug-in Initiative, which was basically a group of young people from the sidelines of the AU and the EU Summit who got together to think about what are some of the common themes that really affect young people and how can young people really participate. And it was really important for us to ensure that we have meaningful youth engagement in these sectors, because a lot of the times we tend to overlook young people's participation and we tend to have it as very tokenistic, where let's consult a few young people and see what they think, but not really contributions that they're able to do. So the AU-EU Youth Plug gave rise to the Youth Hub, and we cover a number of topics. At the moment, we have 5 clusters, governance being one of them. We have an environment cluster, a business cluster, culture and arts and sports cluster, and a peace and security cluster, and most recently, a digital cluster. Now, all of these clusters are looking at specific issues that really, touch on how young people's participation is affected and how young people contribute to this. Now, I think you might yourself, we are looking at Iron Galloway, and we are here with the governance cluster and not the environment cluster. And I'll tell you why we thought about it a little bit differently as the governance cluster. So our cluster basically was to just forward, societies that have accountable and democratic, transparent institutions. And that's really important for us, for young people to be mainstreamed when it comes to actual decision making. And that was really important. And one of the things that we really thought about when we think about what hinders young people's meaningful participation participation. The first thing was, many of them don't have enough information to be able to act. And that was one of the things that we really wanted to address as a cluster, how young people get information that can allow them to take action. The other thing that we thought about is how young people think of how do they engage. So fine, I'm very passionate about a climate issue or a cultural issue or a business issue, but then how do I engage with the decision makers? How do I engage with my government or my local government to be able to make these things come into reality? So we found that there was a big challenge when it comes to how young people, and is that we realize to combine the aspect of information and how to engage, then it gives young people a lot of agency to be able to go out there and take action by themselves. And when we thought about this, and this is how Sauti was born actually, because we thought about having a model that allows young people to understand this information, to be able to know how to engage. And once they have those tools of trade, then they can actually be able to go and engage on any issue. So it might be a climate issue, it might be a business issue, it might be an education issue, but it doesn't really matter. Once we have the tools of trade, then we're actually able to meaningfully engage with our local government and our decision makers. And so basically what we thought about at the initial stages was what we thought, we called the Include Me model or approach. And the idea was have an information map that has all this information for young people to be able to know that really matter to me, commitments that have already been made. How do we center the community around that, those specific issues, so that they can be able to rally, each other and, be able to have a movement that actually calls for action? And then how do we spotlight these issues when they're working and when they're not working? So that was really important. And that is how, Sauti-Youth was born, really. So Sauti is actually a project that we're doing with World Vision Ireland and Youth Work Galloway, between Ireland and Tanzania, and also World Vision Tanzania. And the idea is just to bring, to this idea of climate action from a governance perspective. How do we hold our leaders accountable to the global and the local commitments that they have made with regards to climate action? We want to tackle this climate crisis head on, and young people are really at the heart of it. And we wanted to move this from a point of responsibility beyond the protests, beyond the hashtags. How do we actually take action and be able to hold our leaders to account at the very local level to be able to deliver on these promises that they have already committed to? And the reason we wanted to do this, to just basically do this, is to be able to empower young people to drive tangible change beyond making the noise in the streets and Twitter makes actualized. And this was actually conceptualized through what we call the citizen voice and action model that Sauti and Elaine, I'm sure, will talk about a little bit more. And the idea is basically, modeling young people around the information to understand what they need to do to take local action, and then training them on how to engage with their local governments, being aware of what the commitments are, and being able to, do their own independent scorecards and say, this is how we're doing on this issue and that issue, and being able to take that and following it up with the power of the movement that comes with the climate action movement. And, as a result, we're planning to support 1,000 young people in both Tanzania and Ireland. And this work has already begun. And I don't want to preempt what Ellen is going to share, but just basically, we're already on the ground and we're working around this, and we are giving a lot of voice to young people's passion, which is really important. And more than even just their passion, we are giving rise to real, tangible action that can be taken forward. Over to you, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Mildred. And yeah, I suppose very much looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that. And just the whole, as you said, I suppose that citizen voice and action model is a very interesting model. Ellen, I'll go over to you next. You're, I suppose, on the ground here in Galway with Youth Work Ireland. So you're obviously one of the partners on the initiative and on the project.
Yep, that's right, Elaine. I'll just pull up the our presentation here. Hope you can see that all right. Now, So yeah, I don't want to be too repetitive now with what Mildred was saying there. But SAUTI-Youth, yeah, so in case you're wondering where we got the name, it's Sustainable Accountability Uniting Tanzanian and Irish Youth. So that's where SAUTI comes from. And as Mildred mentioned, it's sort of it's funded by the EU, but it's a collaboration with the EU and the AU, and it brings together World Vision Ireland and Tanzania and Youth Work Ireland, Galway. So that's kind of where the young people come from. So why SAUTI-Youth? So like Mildred was saying, the idea is to tackle climate change on a structural level. So I suppose, and very importantly and very effectively, young people have been getting out and making their voices heard and protesting and appealing for our politicians to do something about climate change and to work and actually implement climate action policies. But I suppose we're kind of, and again, young people and people across the board have been working very hard on an individual basis to make a positive mark, and I suppose, again, I think we'll be mentioning later about eco-anxiety. It can kind of overwhelm you at times, but really at the end of the day, while those I suppose efforts are important and we do have that responsibility, at the end of the day we're going to need systematic and systemic change on this. I suppose that's where we come in, that we're kind of empowering the individual, and then as the individual as part of community to sort of engage and create that dialogue with the people who make those decisions and the policymakers. So yeah, look at it. It's no secret that the Irish government has been very slow on this and implementing policies, and they obviously need a push. So we're willing to give them that push. And we just find that young people aren't really meaningfully engaged in the whole governance process. So I'm not sure who mentioned it already, but it is a bit tokenistic, really, at the end of the day, that a lot of money is pumped into climate action and that kind of thing. But what is there to show for it? And we don't want to be tokens, young people who are taking part in events like this. We want to actually make positive change. So there's the international element between ourselves and Galway and Tanzania. Obviously, they're living in a different context, but again, they're facing similar issues, probably more immediate in that part of the world in terms of climate change. They have a different context in terms of the governance and the accountability and the way their political systems are set up there as well. But we're hoping we can share ideas, and together, obviously it's a bit of a cliche, but united you're stronger, and I think we can provide both perspectives and hopefully reach success in the end. But so our key goals are to empower young people. So the idea is that we will train up through that CVA model that Mildred mentioned, to equip ourselves with the skills and to kind of, so we're up to date with what the current policies are and what are those standards and targets that are, I suppose, on our level, really local government, so our county councils and city councils have, so that we can ensure that they're meeting them. So it's easier said than done. It's there's a lot to it, but we're hoping that we'll train up in this, and then we can train others. So we're engaging with 8 different youth groups in Galway, and kind of spreading the word. So that's the citizen and voice in action model. So it's just about, because the policy is so heavy, and that's one of you kind of feel a bit locked out. I know as a young person, you're interested to a point, and then it gets very policy heavy, and you feel like you can't have any influence on it. So we're kind of trying to change that, and rather than our public reps, who in fairness are elected on our behalf, but rather than them making the decisions, why can't we be involved in that process as well? So yeah, I suppose I won't keep you much longer now. I know we're keeping an eye on the time, but the CVA model kind of just works to mobilize citizens and equip them with those tools so that they can monitor the government, and so the government knows that we're watching, but that we can be involved, and not just young people, but whole communities. I think there does need to be that mindset change that, this is urgent, but to reach those sustainable goals that we talk about, we all need to be involved. So just finally, I suppose just the potential of SAUTI-Youth. Obviously, we're uniting European and African young people, so I think there's something really positive out of that from getting the international perspective. And young people aren't just consulted, if even, but we're actually actively involved, and there is the possibility to scale it up. It's a model that can be replicated. And again, just finally, we actually are putting together an app, which will be part of this whole process, and again, can be replicated. We hope to have it up and running by the summer. But basically, people can, on a local level, you can update your own data, and that'll be free to access for everyone who has the app. And you can be, you could have a list of what are the climate targets in my area, and are they being met? That kind of model. So that's it on my end.
Very good, brilliant. Thanks, thank you, Ellen, Ellen and Mildred, for the SAUTI project. I mean, I think it really does look, I suppose, fascinating. I really like the governance. It was an interesting, as you said, Mildred. You decided not to go with the environment cluster, because maybe a lot of initiatives, obviously around environment, are put in that environment cluster. And sometimes that's the thing, but sometimes. I know I've been working in the environmental world for many years, over I think I'm saying over 20 years now, maybe over 30 years actually, fully in the environmental world. And the environment was often sort of seen as this add-on, maybe, and something that was, oh yes, we must think about the environment now, and we add it on at the end. Whereas I think when you have it centralized, as you said, to that governance side, it's much more integrated, I suppose, and mainstreamed. And maybe that has been the challenge to now, that we haven't seen that environment and climate as mainstreamed as it needed to be. So I find that really interesting. I mean, just maybe to clarify, the CVA model, is that a model that you guys came up with yourself through the project, or is it something from somewhere else? Just out of interest.
It's a combination of two things. Basically, how we envisioned the support in terms of what the governance cluster would be able to do to make young people meaningfully contribute to policy and legislation and change in that direction. But then also how World Vision has been seeing or envisioning this meaningful youth participation as well. So a combination of those two elements. And one of the biggest things that we're also bringing in is the digital cluster, in a way that, we're really online and we're really turned on to being, very adept in communicating digitally. And how do we combine this really three different aspects of governance, environment, and digital to come up and create one thing that can allow us to be able to move forward in a strategic direction. So it's a combination of things, really.
Okay, fabulous. Yeah, great. And thanks to all of our panelists. I suppose, first of all, thank you for all for inputting there, for all of your individual inputs and all the different projects, I suppose, that you're involved with. I suppose maybe I might go to Orla, maybe first of all, if that's okay. And I suppose just following on maybe from that, I think SAUTI and the systemic, and we can come back to that in a little while and talk a little bit more about that systemic change and what's needed there. We might go to Orla, to you first. And I think, the idea, I suppose, of that individual, and I know, the individual taking action, and this idea that, lots of individuals come together, and when lots of individuals come together, lots of things happen, I suppose. Isn't that the idea? So maybe can you tell us a little bit about that idea of how you think individuals can act most effectively, maybe individually and then also collectively?
Yeah. So as you said, systemic change is what needs to happen, but that's not going to happen unless we have individuals making their own changes, their own actions. If you think about in the past, when things have been discontinued, your favorite chocolate bar from when you were a child, people stopped buying it, and that's why it's no longer in the shops. So it's the same. If take vegetables in plastic for an example, that they're still going to be putting plastic on the shelves if we're buying it. Now I know that buying loose is more expensive, so it's often not a choice for people, but definitely if you have the choice, you should think about where your money's going. Are you just buying plastic, or are you actually buying for the future you want? So by doing these individual actions, we are signaling to the companies, to the government, to everyone, this is what we want. So you might think, oh, but me doing it, everyone else is still buying the plastic stuff, what does that matter? apparently within a company, if like 6 or 7 people write in about an issue or a topic, like that's going to go straight up the chain, because apparently that means like such a wide, like, if not many people write into companies and stuff, so if like 7 people stand up and say, I think this, then the company will actually take that seriously. So it doesn't take a lot of people doing the same thing together to start change happening. So we do need that individual change to start the systemic change, because nothing's going to change unless we do.
Okay, thanks, Orla. And I think it was interesting, kind of linking what you said into our survey, which was, a lot of young people were saying that corporations needed to take responsibility. That we're talking about the systemic change. I think they spoke about government needing to change, and obviously from the policy side. And I think that's what you're doing, the SAUTI project, within the corporations also. And of course, government links in with corporations as well. But the consumer really it plays a big part and a big role in corporations' decision making. And I think, Orla, as you said, if people are making those decisions to buy and purchase, I suppose as a young person, you have that bit of power, I suppose, with your consumer, with what you can consume as well. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to Anthony Michaela next. And Anthony Michaela, I think it's interesting. You might tell us a little bit about the what's the podcast, the Teen Environmentalists, first of all, and then maybe also from yourselves, that whole idea of, you've been doing action projects. So that idea of, doing something, taking action. And as you said, you've been doing it, you did the Young Environmentalist Awards. So you did these action projects in groups, and that idea of collective action for environmental issues. You're the youngest of our panelists. So you're here and you're 16-year-olds. I think most others, I think you're over 20, you're in your 20s. So you're teenagers. So maybe tell us, a little bit about the podcast, I think, and the action project, and what you found that how you found doing those action initiatives.
Okay, so that's a good question. Thank you for asking. We went to the Youth Summit, which was basically where we got the action project, and that's where ECO-UNESCO helped us and gave us tips and helped us around our project. And we were given a list of different actions you can make, like at a local level, for your action project. And we were looking through it, and we saw podcasts, because it was in the creative section. And that was during a time, especially with the whole COVID regulations, where we were at our house listening to podcasts and watching like films on Netflix. And it was a real like age and boost of like podcasts and videos like that. So we wanted to basically use that sort of momentum to take podcasts, but use it as an educational way for young people, especially because we know ourselves that sort of information isn't easily accessible. Sometimes you have to join like certain college courses or whatever. It's hard as young people to get this sort of information. So we wanted to condense it and use it and turn it into how we can understand it, and people our age. Obviously, the podcast will be accessible for all ages, but that will be our main target demographic.
Yeah, because we definitely understand like eco-anxiety and climate anxiety, and how overwhelming and often paralyzing that it can make you feel. So like this can condense all the information, and even Anthony and I taking action and coming to events like these like helps so much to like remember that you aren't alone, and that us as young people don't have this burden by ourselves, because at times like we feel like a massive responsibility. So actions like these and ECO-UNESCO's workshops and events like these really help with like alleviating the climate eco-anxiety a lot, and the action projects really help with that.
Yeah. And do you find as well that your peers are your peers interested and engaged? Are they thinking about climate change and climate action as you are?
Yeah, so it definitely varies. Like we've met a lot of like-minded people through ECO-UNESCO and the YSP project, and they are very supportive. They care a lot. Then obviously there's the other side of the spectrum, where I think it's either a lack of interest or definitely a lack of education, which I think is how that just shows how important formal education can be. if people have access to it, to formal education, and then they're more likely to be interested, because lack of interest can often be because of like they don't have the resources or they don't have the confidence. And so things like that can really help people become interested. But definitely the majority of young people that we know are already interested in things like this.
Okay, yeah. And I suppose you touched on there the eco-anxiety side. So, you said that doing something, and I suppose that goes back then to Orla, maybe what you were saying, that idea of actually doing something, getting up and taking action as a young person, that's very helpful, I suppose, and that makes you feel, as you said, it makes you feel like you're not alone. So it is really important, it sounds like, to have these groups that you can come together with like-minded young people, and that you can feel supported. And that when you come together in those groups, whether it be or as a climate ambassador, whether it be in the Youth for Sustainable Development Programme, or whether it be with other young people from Ireland and Africa and Europe, you're coming together in groups where young people are interested, and that's that is really helpful. Is that, from Ellen and Mildred's perspective in the SAUTI project and your whole experience with eco-anxiety, have you, is this something that you're hearing young people talk about? Are they concerned? Are young people feeling anxious? And if so, how is this, how is it being helped, I suppose?
Yeah, from my perspective anyway, definitely, even personally, but just my peers, there is, like Michaela was saying, that feeling of a burden that this is resting on us to do something about it, and you realise the clock is ticking. And like if you thought about it, it would really overwhelm you, So being in I suppose environments like this, you realize you're not alone, and again, you're moving forward together and doing something about it. Now, I don't want to name drop, but I was recently on a panel discussion with Mary Robinson, and I asked her about it because when you get the chance, and she said it's something she hears about a lot as well, and she said her advice anyway would be just to keep active, so at least at the end of the day, you played your part, and it doesn't have to be massive, but as long as, I suppose, you're just being mindful and not being wasteful in your own life, whatever about engaging in groups like this, you're making a positive impact, and to know that, at the end of the day, it doesn't all rest on you. But it definitely is something that's becoming more prevalent, and it's a bit worrying, actually. Again, now, like any sort of problem you might have, talking, like it's again a cliche, but a problem shared is a problem halved. So I'd say definitely talk to someone. But it's something I think we're going to definitely have to be more aware of. It's definitely becoming more and more prevalent, eco-anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. And Mildred, is that something that you're hearing about? Is that, in your experience?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's at the top of everybody's mind as we speak. For instance, where I have a countrywide plastic bag ban, so you can't actually walk around with any plastic bags, and that's that's the law. So find some things like that, being very progressive and actually giving people hope that collective action can actually yield something, and really takes away from that feeling of helplessness of there's nothing I can do about it, or there's no amount of contribution that can make any significant change. And I think that really helps keep young people motivated in their actions.
Very much. So that's kind of, as you said, that individual change that leads, and I think we're talking about this a lot, the individual change that leads to the collective, hopefully that some collective change. And then, as you're trying to do, I think in SAUTI, is that systemic kind of change as well. But that, I suppose, as you said, Orla, change happens at all of those different levels all the way along, and that actually it's maybe, well, there is, I suppose I would see, yes, there's merit in all of those actions. There's merit in those individual actions, those collective actions, the action projects that young people do, and then leading to that more systemic, I suppose, change. We're nearly at the end of our time, which I can't believe it, because it's actually gone so quickly. COP26 is coming up later on this year. So it's going to be in September, this Conference of Parties, the UN, United Nations. So, I mean, I suppose, imagine, I always think, imagine you're in front of these people, and I mean, if you're on going to be on calls with Mary Robinson, you're probably talking to some of them already, Ellen. But imagine you're standing in front of the room, a little bit maybe like what Greta Thunberg did before, but you don't have to be there with Greta Thunberg. I'm not asking you to come to come up with a Greta Thunberg speech, but it's that sort of thing that if you're in the room with these people who can make decisions, if you're in the room with these policymakers, if you're in the room with these people, and young people feel they're not being heard, and this is an opportunity to be heard. Like, what would you say to them? Like, what do you want to say to them? Does anyone want to take that? Like, if you had that opportunity, or not even in COP26, even if you had the opportunity just to talk to your local politician or your local or your minister, whoever else, and you're talking to them about, the importance of engaging young people in climate action, about environmental issues, climate issues. Like, what are the things? What do you want to say to them? Does anyone?
I'll go first anyway.
Ellen, yeah.
No, look at it. Obviously, it'd be great to have that opportunity. I suppose it's hard to know because, like, it feels like you're screaming, and I'm sure your experience, Elaine, like you've been after this for 20 years, like, and you're getting nowhere. But I think the tide is changing. So obviously, the first point I would say is, clock is ticking. This is urgent. The time for action is now. We can't put this off any longer. But again, it's just a mindset change. We need to remember that everything is related to everything. It's about sustainability at the end of the day, and not just climate action. That point that, rather than environmentalism and climate action being the afterthought that you attach to your policies, that is at the very heart of it. Not even climate action, but just sustainability, that we're not being wasteful, we're being mindful. Say with things like the just transition, that you don't take away jobs without replacing the jobs, that you include people in the dialogue. And I suppose from the SAUTI perspective, we're really passionate about including people, so everyone is at the table and can offer their perspective. But that would be, if I had the chance, I'd be, time is running out, let's do this. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks, Ellen. Thank you. Anyone else want to come in there? I think, Anthony, did you want to come in? And Michaela?
Yeah, I think I would definitely urge the policymakers to think of the future and really urge them to think of the earth as opposed to their economic status. Because, like, obviously we're not going to have a future if they keep thinking about money and profit and these things. And leading off that, to really introduce meaningful legislation that actually does make a difference and isn't aiming for just net zero, but for genuinely zero carbon emissions.
Yeah, and I also think that they need to listen to young people as a whole, because I feel like as most young people, they don't have like the right to vote, so they're not going to be focusing most of their campaigns or their ideas or legislation around them. But I feel like they need to listen to the next generation, because like Anne said, that this is this is urgent. Yeah, sorry, and we need to take action as soon as possible. And there's a lot of like legislation that is going to only start like having effect in like 10 or 5 years, but this is something that needs to start now, because we're at a critical rate, and the clock is ticking.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Orla, does anyone else Orla, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. The main thing I would want to say is, like, to make sure that when we are planning our climate actions, to make sure that we leave no one behind. We often we can see so clearly it's Europe and America's fault, like, that we're in this climate mess, isn't it? Like, we're the polluters. I mean, China's the world's largest polluter now, but they only overtook America a short while ago. And yet we're not the ones paying for it, which just doesn't seem fair at all. Like, we need to be, like, we're the rich countries. We should be putting our money not towards saving ourselves, but towards saving people in countries that have been affected in Africa, like sub-Saharan countries, and in parts of Asia too. Like, we're not feeling the effects of it yet. I mean, we will feel its effects. You'll see after the break. But we need to make sure that we're not leaving these people behind, like in the desert, or like their islands underwater. We need to make sure that we're helping developing countries to move forward with us.
Okay, thank you, Orla. Mildred, do you want to come in, or? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, my main message is that the effects of what we do today are cyclic, meaning that they will circle back to us, even though it doesn't affect us at this very moment. It will circle back to us. And the most important thing in terms of taking action is really looking at that collective action. It's not any one person's responsibility, but really just to look at how we can include all the voices meaningfully to actually contribute to making sustainable decisions that will impact all of us later.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. I mean, I think that's, for me, I think that's so inspiring. I think it's so inspiring to hear all of you speak about the importance of, you talked about the holistic, everything is connected, and, making sure that we get that holistic message across, that that there is the importance of the just transition, that young people's voices should be at the center of this, that environment needs to be at the center of policy making, that we need to look at not just, we need to look at our actions, as you said, we have the individual action, but really the idea of collective actions as well, and that there's that sense of urgency around climate, and that really, as you said, the clock is ticking, so we need really to be making these big, bold, brave, systemic changes that are needed, and I suppose they're needed now. So I just want to thank you very, very much for your input today, and for being with us this afternoon. I hope you all enjoyed the session. I really enjoyed the session. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Elaine.
Thanks, everyone.